Hello, my name is Jacob Marsh. Today we'll be discussing chronic traumatic encephalopathy, otherwise known as CTE. Just to break down some of the scientific language, chronic means that it lasts a long time or does not go away. Traumatic, in this context, means that any damage impacting the brain. Encephalopathy means damage to any brain or structure. CTE is a progressive disease which occurs when someone has multiple concussions or severe concussions, to the point where the brain or certain parts of the brain degenerate and decay. CTE was first discovered as punch-drunk syndrome, where it was discovered that many boxers would just act drunk all the time as a result of the trauma to the brain sustained. For the time period of 1928 to 2005, only 50 people were ever diagnosed with CTE. That is, until Mike Webster's brain was studied. Since then, 1,300 people have been diagnosed with the disease. One of the interesting aspects of CTE is the fact that you cannot be diagnosed with it while you are alive. It has to be a postnatal or post-death diagnosis. Some of the effects of CTE are as follows: aggressiveness, depression, suicidal behavior, poor impulse control, and dementia related to Alzheimer's disease.
Hi, my name is Liam Jackson, and I'll be talking about one of the most notable and important advancements in the study of CTE. In the case of Mike Webster, Webster was a dominant football player in the late 70s and 80s, but back then the technology for player safety was not as advanced as now, so players were more prone to head injuries. This lack of protection also proved to be detrimental for the players later in life, such as Webster. Webster retired from football in 1990 and started to show signs of dementia and brain decline. He would forget to eat, sleep in his car, and his teeth would start falling out. When Webster died at the age of 50 as a result of a heart attack, his brain was then intensely studied, and they found unusual clumps of protein strands clogging up the brain and killing healthy brain cells. This eventually led to the widespread awareness and formal diagnosis of CTE, the dangers of it, and safety measures to prevent it. Another prime example of CTE affecting former sports players was the case of Aaron Hernandez. Hernandez was a star tight end on the Patriots who murdered his friend, went to prison for a few years, and then hung himself in his prison cell. Hernandez was only 27. When researchers studied his brain, they found stage 3 CTE, which was the most severe they had found this young. Hernandez's attorney stated that the cause was the Patriots and the NFL had failed to disclose, treat, or protect against the dangers of repetitive injuries to the former tight end's brain. This case provided even more awareness and widespread knowledge of the dangers of CTE and why we need to prevent it as much as we can.
So some of the connections we have to our units, especially the brain and biochemistry and then mental health, is that the brain produces a protein called tau. Although we did not learn about tau, it is a protein associated with dementia and brain structure. And it has also been found with people with suspected CTE, postnatal CTE. When the brain shrinks, especially in the frontal lobe or amygdala, as we learned about, it can lead to aggressive behavior along with poor impulse control. These parts of the brain also impacts memory, so it makes sense that trauma inflicted along with all the other functions provided. Also, with the damage to the brain, cause unregulated emotions and chemicals, which can cause depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, and so many more. What do you know about CTE, traumatic brain injuries, or concussions?
I know that they are traumatic injuries to the head and brain.
Have you ever had a concussion or known somebody with one?
I personally haven't had one, but I've known multiple people with concussions.
Do you think there are any other sports or professions that are impacted by CTE other than contact sports?
Maybe construction workers or people that aren't as in a safe as environment.
What do you think could be some tests to test for CTE?
You could do a brain scan.
What are some ways to properly prevent CTE?
To not have any head injuries or play contact sports.
Do you think any other factors contribute to CTE?
Maybe any head injuries as a kid or things like that.
Okay.
What do you know about CTE, traumatic brain injuries, or concussions?
I know that they're severe impacts to the brain.
Have you ever had a concussion or known someone with one?
Yeah, I've been to the Carolina Concussion Clinic in Cary 2 or 3 times now for concussions. Um, I've had 2 that are reported and a couple other ones that have not been reported. I had a lot of issues with balance, stability, and memory when I had concussions.
Do you think there are any other sports or professions that are impacted by CTE other than contact sports?
Yeah, I think like maybe basketball and soccer. I know in basketball people fall a lot and hit their head on the back of the floorboards, which is bad concussions that can happen. Also know in soccer they'll hit the ball with their head a lot, which can probably cause mild CTE in some cases. Also think like construction workers or people that work in unsafe environments without head support could have CTE.
What do you think could be some tests that you can run to test for CTE?
I think if you maybe some sort of like diagnosis checklist that a psychiatrist and a neurologist will come by. If the patient checks X amount of boxes, then they'll probably be formally diagnosed with it.
What are ways to properly prevent CTE?
Abstinence from head injuries. If you don't get head injuries, you can't get CTE.
And do you think there are any other factors that contribute to CTE?
Oh, totally. I think if you don't have good neck strength, whiplash could definitely be a factor. If you don't wear helmets, like when you ride a bike and you fall a lot, or if you just are prone to them.
I have yet to have any serious head or brain injuries, but as I continue to play sports with high chances for head injuries, I'm always worried. I think a lot about if my choices to continue to engage in contact sports will majorly affect me in my future. I have known people with multiple concussions and how they feel differently after and if they feel affected by them. Brain injuries will most likely always affect me and the people I am around, but I hope for a more effective way to diagnose and treat them.
I've had many concussions in my life, a couple reported and a lot more unreported. And with this comes the risk of CTE and complications later in my life, which is why I will probably not continue to do contact sports later. And it's also a big reason why I will probably not let my future kids do contact sports like football, rugby, or lacrosse. Because already at 17 years old, I feel post-concussive symptoms such as dizziness, forgetfulness, and mental health problems. I'm not saying I have CTE, but it will most likely linger in my thoughts until given the option to test for it, as right now there is no 100% effective way to test for CTE. Just to conclude, CTE is a neurodegenerative disease that impacts a lot more people than you would think. It also contributes to athletes' mental and physical health and is currently untreatable or untestable in alive people. Use the information that you've learned to properly inform anyone, or if you are in a relationship with a friend, have a partner, or have a child that wants to participate in contact sports, be sure to let them know of the risks involved and the risk of CTE later in life.